You've seen it before. A game gets announced, fans get hyped, and then it gets delayed. Once, twice, maybe even for years. So, why does this keep happening? Is game development really that hard? Spoiler alert is yes, it is. And today we're going to be going behind the scenes to figure out why game development takes so long to do. From invisible bugs to changing visions to the brutal realities of human limitations. Hello everyone, I'm Piers Duplock, producer and consultant on over 30 video game titles, and today we're going to be jumping straight in. So let's go. Most people think making a game is like building a house. You start with the foundations, you put up some walls, you put a roof on it, and then finally you decorate. But games, they don't work quite like that. Games are systems and everything is connected. So nothing is final until everything is in and working. Let's take an example. Adding a new enemy to your game sounds, in principle, very simple. However, that will also affect the level design. That'll affect the combat balance, the AI behavior, art assets, and even audio as well. And if you take the time to adjust the camera for that new enemy, guess what? You're looking at breaking animations and revealing design issues in your level as well. What we usually get to play as the end consumer is maybe version 4 or 5, maybe even more of the polished, tested, verified original idea. Hey, quick reminder, if you're enjoying this video, please do remember to drop a like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thank you so much. That would be appreciated. So, firstly, let's break it all down. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's talk about our phases of production. First up, we have pre-production. This is where the ideas are formed, storyboards, concepts, planning. This is where you figure out what you want to make. The phase after this is the longest by far. It is called production. This is where you're building all of the assets to go into the game. This can be everything between systems, actual art assets, environments, voice acting, animations. This is where you're building everything and getting it together. The next milestones after this one is typically where we as consumers would hear things. Alpha and beta. Alpha is more typical where everything's in and you can actually play the game from start to finish. It's probably a little rough around the edges and a lot of work needs to go in, but you're starting to see the bare bones of the idea come together. And beta is a more polished version of that where you can sit down, finally evaluate, is the game fun? Is it any good? Do we have to make any major changes? Now, it's important to bear in mind that before we get to alpha and beta, maybe 5 years could go into the project by now, and you're still really evaluating that idea of, is this game fun? Is it good? There is one final step, though, to go after these, and it tends to be certification. This is more for a console-based game. For example, Steam doesn't really have many barriers to getting on the platform. You pay your fee, you make sure it fits into a category, and off you go. But platforms like Xbox, PlayStation, and the Switch platforms have these certifications, these checklists that you have to go through. So you have to make sure that's all well and good before you can release on those platforms as well. With each of these phases being so critical, you can imagine what happens if one runs long or if you hit trouble. It can shift the entire timeline. For instance, a 6-month delay in pre-production, for instance, could cause you to miss release by an entire year if you do not move things around. So what does that mean in real terms? Well, unlike apps or websites, you can't just plug and play a system into your video game. Every interaction needs to be built, tested, and verified in the game itself. So we'll use another example. If we want to add a fireball spell to our video game, sounds relatively simple, relatively comfortable. Here's the things we're going to have to consider to get that into the game. We're going to need a designer to define how it works, its mana cost, its damage dealt, all the numbers. We're going to need a programmer to build it, get that code working. We're going to need an animator to animate whatever gesture casting a fireball looks like. We're going to need a VFX artist to add, the pretty flames on this fireball. And we're going to need a sound designer to create an impact sound to make it feel like that's really hitting the enemy. And finally, we're going to need QA to test. Is it taking the right amount of mana? Is it dealing damage correctly? Does it look like a fireball? All these things need to come together to do that one spell. Now, take that and multiply it across every single system and every single asset in the entire game. Now suddenly you're starting to see why such a small thing can take such a long time and why games these days are taking such a long time to make, because we're jamming more and more of these systems in there. Another big time sink in the video game process is testing. And as a former QA tester myself, I really feel this one. Anytime anything is added to the game, whether it's code, whether it's art asset, whether it's a new animation, anything at all, it needs to be tested. And you might be thinking, just test that one asset, in it goes, it's fine. Not quite true. You have to test everything which is related to that asset as well. So it's a bit of a chain reaction. One thing goes in, you test that thing, but you also test everything that that one thing touches. And the funny part is that actually goes for fixing bugs as well. By fixing a bug, you can actually cause more bugs. It is a complete chain reaction. Not only that, but you have multiple platforms to think of as well. This is why some developers try and keep their platforms to a limit if possible. For instance, releasing on PC, you do have to think about how many hardware configurations there are for PCs. All the different graphics cards, all the different CPUs, everything. But at least you just have to worry about Steam or the Epic Games Store, whatever you're launching on there. If you're also launching on console, you've got to think about the specific hardware for the Nintendo Switch, the specific hardware for the Xbox, PlayStation. All those kinds of platforms will have their own issues, which you then have to address as well. And by fixing those, you might also cause issues on the other platforms too. So you have to be aware of that, and it takes a lot of time to get that right. Another significant reason for game delays is the game simply changing during development. Now, this is where I'm going to put my producer hat back on, because this is called scope creep, and it's a producer's job to manage this as best as possible. Scope creep typically refers to when a feature is added or changed during development, when things have already started being made and you're changing it as you go. A few examples of this could be, for instance, adding on to your existing open world map, adding multiplayer perhaps, or maybe even changing your monetization system. For instance, the publisher wants a battle pass and you've got to add that in all of a sudden. There are also creative pivots as well. For instance, if you get to that alpha or beta milestone and the game simply isn't fun, isn't working, perhaps you need to go back to the drawing board and re-go over stuff there. And yes, this does mean you are throwing out months, sometimes even years worth of work. It's painful, it's expensive, but sometimes it is necessary to get a good quality game out to market that people are actually going to enjoy. And now putting on my people management hat, games aren't made by machines. They're made by people, and people get sick, people get overwhelmed, people get burnt out. And that has to be taken into account as well. The games industry has struggled with crunch culture for a long time now. I hope it is getting better. It certainly feels like it's getting better since when I started. However, working nights, working weekends is still an element for some companies. And this leads to poor morale, burnout, or long-term turnover at companies. Teams shrink, productivity shrinks, and projects fail as a result. During recent times, we had COVID and the remote work that was needed there. This did cause more delays too, as teams simply weren't set up to work remotely together. We're now starting to see a little better timelines on those, but it was a big loss of momentum for the industry. And also, staff changes are just brutal when they happen. If you lose a key member of staff halfway through the project, it could take months, if not years, to get a replacement up to speed, and that is going to cost your project valuable time as well. Now, here's the kicker. Most of the time, a delayed game is actually the better game. We saw this with Breath of the Wild, where it was delayed repeatedly. Baldur's Gate spent 3 years in the early access, and we know what great game that came out to be, very critically acclaimed. But games like Anthem came out on time, however, were not to the quality we expected, not to the fun standard we expected. They could have used a little more time for that polish. When studios delay a game, they're not being lazy about it. They are trying to bring that quality bar up to the standard they expect of themselves and the standard that customers expect of that game as well. They're trying to hit the vision, squash the bugs, and get a game out there that they can be proud of. So next time you see a game delayed, just remember it's not about dragging their feet, it's about doing it right. Now, what's a game you're glad got delayed, or even one that released too soon? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want more deep dives like this, please do hit that subscribe button. And thank you so much for watching.